Everybody, welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Durling, and we have a returning guest here, Mr. Martin Popoff. He's been on several times, and you know that if Martin's on, we've got a book to talk about, and we're going to be talking about Run with the Wolf, Rainbow on record. Richie Blackmore's second, success story after Deep Purple. This is a panel book, like a lot that Martin has done. I'm proud to say I'm part of this book, and yeah, so Martin, you've done Rainbow and Deep Purple related books. You've done a ton of them. What made you decide that you could tackle the very relatively brief Rainbow catalog one more time?
Yeah, so it's funny. I've done a full rainbow book, and I really like my proper rainbow book. It's called Sensitive to Light, the Rainbow Story, because it's been through the ringer twice. So it's been updated and rewritten and re-edited, and I really like that one. And yeah, I've done the Deep Purple books and that, but once I've done an actual book on a band I love like that, I mean, the panel book is the natural choice because it's now turning it over to you guys and getting all your opinions. So I'm the moderator now, and we're just going through every studio album. And I also like the length of the catalog, and I like that it's evergreen. It's over with. I mean, it had a little bit of a messy end there with Stranger in Us All, but still, it's a succinct catalog. There ain't going to be no more Rainbow albums. So I like that it's evergreen. It's cast in stone. And I figured, let's put in final vinyl, let's put in on stage, and then it comes to a good tidy number. But having said that, I'm surprised that this thing turned out to be 300 pages, right?
Yeah.
300 pages of just analysis on every studio album. And it's really cool talking to you about it because you've got two of these done, and I'm sure there's going to be more, but you've got the Y&T and the Kansas, both have done really well. So it's good to see that you're carrying on the tradition of this idea.
Well, I mean, it's your album by album books that gave me the idea for it. So, yeah, it's a fun format because you do end up with opinions that or aspects of the music that you would never have thought of before. Anytime you have Peter Jones involved, he's gonna get really really in depth about the drumming, which is great. But he puts it in ways that I think that the average reader who's never sat behind a drum kit before can understand what he's talking about when he's talking about particular parts of songs where there's double bass or he's hitting the ride cymbal. You just go, oh yeah, I know exactly that part he's talking about. I never noticed it before.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that you included, I think probably because it is such a brief catalog, you might as well talk about on stage. You might as well talk about final vinyl. And I'm in the final vinyl chapter, and that's such a weird little release. I mean, it doesn't know whether it wants to be a live album or a best of, and it just kind of sits there. And sadly, it was for many years, it was the only Rainbow best of that was out there, except for the European one that came out in '81. But then that's missing some stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a weird album to talk about. So it almost ends up being as long as any of the studio album chapters, just because everybody's got, we've all got our gripes with it. The packaging, and then the fact that the hits are the live versions, and the live versions are way too fast. And, why are these songs 5.5 minutes long? They don't need to be. And, Stranger in Us All came like now, now it looks closer together. You got a 20-year span now that we're another 20 years removed.
Never looks closer together for me. I just hate those messy ends to catalog, right? Pink Floyd, Endless River, and unfortunately one Soundgarden album,
Van Halen
circumstances there, but Van Halen's a weird one. Yeah, there's a bunch of those, but yeah, you brought up an interesting point, like it's cool talking to all the panelists, and there's a lot of panelists in this one, but it's cool getting those different personalities and those different perspectives, but it's kind of there's an illogic to it too, where it's like, yes, Peter Jones is a great speaker, but he's not on every album, right? And then John Gaffney is going to give you some great music theory stuff, but he's not on every album. So it's like as you go through it, you kind of wish all voices were on all albums, so you get this consistency. So it is just a weird grab bag of a bunch of guys sitting around a kitchen table drinking beers talking about these albums, right? And then it's a different group. So yeah, these books, it's like I'm still, after having done like 15 of them or whatever, right? I mean, I'm still like wondering, is there value here? Is this a good idea? Because they basically get compliments and they do okay. But the odd time someone says, I don't care what these guys think about these albums, right? Because the whole thing is, there's a lot of opinion, right?
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
really, it's basically an exercise in opinion. So as I'm going through editing them, and I really do edit like crazy. Like I am tightening up the text and moving things around and adding little things or whatever. So I hope people are okay with that process. But the idea is, is to make everybody look smarter, even
Yeah.
still, right?
It has
Because
to read well.
yeah, it does. Exactly. It's the difference between a straight conversation and something. Now it's officially in a book, right? It's got to be somewhat better. Um, but yeah, it is cool, and I think the neat thing that I always get complimented on, and I'm sure you're going to get the same thing, is that with the Y&T and the Kansas, is that it sends people back to the albums for new perspectives, to
Yes.
listen to it again, and just to listen to it, period. It's like gets them reacquainted with the catalog again. So you spent your money on these albums. It's the same as when I write a book that's more traditional with a lot of interview stuff. Of the band itself. We're ultimately paying, and this job as well, playing DJ, right? So we're ultimately just trying to turn people on to music and say, oh, go listen to this part. Oh, that's the greatest song ever, and that kind of thing. So we definitely get just constantly what keeps me interested, even though I know Rainbow like the back of my hand. I mean, what keeps me interested is hearing those new views and those new connections made between this and that, and new things about Richie as a guitar player or Cozy as a drummer or whatever, that I never really thought of. And often that makes me, appreciate the catalog more.
I do it myself. I mean, I've gone back. I mean, obviously, to do one of these books, you need to get yourself refamiliarized with everything. But after I read other people and what they have to say about it, I go back myself. But yeah, I mean, the greatest thing is when people say, and I've had this happen a lot with both of those books, people have said, I didn't have any of their albums, or I had a couple of their albums. Man, I just went on Amazon and I just bought two or three more of their albums. That's great. That's to me, that's the point. And you made me think of something else with the panel books that I hadn't thought of before. Like, there exists, by nature of the fact that we spread out the panelists throughout the chapters, there could exist someday an alternate version
Yeah.
of these books with an entirely different, okay, so maybe the people that talked on this album are now talking about this album.
Yeah.
But you're right. If you had every panelist that you select to talk about every album, the book would be 1,000 pages long. Which that would be a lot to ask of a reader. I think you'd have to be a pretty diehard fan. And yeah, you're right. I mean, you're going to get the occasional gripe. I mean, I had somebody on Amazon comment on my Y&T book. It said, "Don't listen to this cast of characters. Listen to the music for yourselves." It's like, well, we never said that our opinions were any more than opinions, but okay. You can't, there's going to be people like that go, well, who cares what they think? Well, okay. But I'm more interested in the people that have never really listened to this band and read and go, well, they seem to think it sounds like this, or if I like this, I might like that. So, and Rainbow's an interesting case because it's at least two different bands, right? Under that same name. It's at least two different, completely
I think it's like
different.
four. It's basically four different.
Four, yeah, but
maybe even five. I mean, God,
you've got the medieval,
yeah,
and you've got the commercial, and different permutations of those. So you're going to get fans from different ends of it. Like I'm a big fan of the Joel and Turner era. I like commercial sounding hard rock. So that's the era of Rainbow I gravitate to. I do appreciate the early stuff, of course. Down to Earth is fantastic, because Down to Earth is almost part of that Joel and Turner era, whatever you want to call it, because the mindset was there. And then Stranger in Us All is this strange combination of both. And that's still an album that's relatively new to me, like within the past couple of years. I never got it when it came out. I never ever saw it in the store. But I was doing an episode on top 10 Rainbow songs with with Peter Kerr and with Steve Deluxe from Rock and Metal Invasion. I said, well, I better listen to this album if I'm going to pick my top 10 songs. I better have heard everything that there is to hear. And I liked it better than I thought it would, because I thought it would be a complete throwaway. And it's a decent enough album, but it kind of doesn't know what it wants to be. And you're right, it's 12 years after Been Out of Shape, and it's way there at the end. It's like, AEIU, sometimes Y, and Y is way down here. It's it's a weird album. Do you think maybe Richie wanted to try and compete with Deep Purple because he knew they'd be moving on without him, and he wanted to just get one last jab in there, or what do you think that was all about?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I guess he still wanted to be hard rock in that, but and it's being. I think Richie, doesn't mind just breaking the rules, and probably all business sense would say have some continuity with the old Rainbow, and there's none whatsoever in terms of the personnel, right? So I don't know. Yeah, I think that point was made in that chapter about them not knowing what they want to be. But the other thing about that chapter, which I really like, and I get this compliment about, I did those two regular Black Sabbath books, and the second one has all those Tony Martin albums, and it's like people say, thank you for writing full chapters on each Tony Martin album, right? And so same thing with Stranger in Us All. I actually, one of my favorite things to enjoy about these books is when there's an inconsequential album that no one's ever talked about very much, and I get people to talk about it seriously, right? So we've got pages and pages and pages of analysis of Stranger in Us All.
Yeah.
Who else has ever done that? No, it doesn't exist anywhere else, right? Everybody knows about all the old stuff. Funny thing, you brought up Down to Earth. There might be a show in this or whatever, but to me, Down the Earth is this band's Rock in a Hard Place, right?
Yeah.
It's like the Renegade alternate lineup album that is awesome.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Despite in spite of itself, it ends up being a really good album.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so just this isolated album with some very problematic personnel changes. And it turns out to be great, right? There's probably a few of those out there. But yeah, I make no secret of it. It is my favorite Rainbow album. I just love it to death. I think they just do just kind of everything right on it.
And that was totally my goal with the Y&T and Kansas books, was I wanted to talk about those later day albums
Yeah.
just as much as I talked about the earlier albums. I wanted to make sure that those, I didn't care if it was a major label release. I didn't care what the lineup was. If it's got the name on it, we're going to give it as much credence as the older ones. And I think that's very important, because I think that it kind of sells a band short. I mean, even if it's not that great an album, at least give it a chance to be talked about, and in some cases make people aware that I didn't know they had any albums after whatever point. And with Rainbow, it would be really easy, especially nowadays, if you weren't, paying attention in the 90s, not to know there was a Rainbow album that came out in 95, because the narrative has been Richie left Deep Purple and went into the medieval stuff. Well, yes, he did. But before that, he, one last grab at the Rainbow thing. And it is funny how, in a way, in a strange way, even though it's got that long time gap, it does kind of tie it together, because both the debut and Stranger in Us All have Richie Blackmore's Rainbow. So they're almost like bookends.
Yeah.
And I have to think that in both of those cases, that's more a marketing thing in the first case of the first albums, to tell people, by the way, this is who this album is by. This is why you should pay attention, not just some random new band called Rainbow. And in the 90s, it's like, in case you forgot, this is Richie Blackmore's post Deep Purple band and his bag.
I love that album cover too. I mean, that's the other thing we do in these books is like, one of my stock questions is, does anybody have any comments on the album cover? So I get lots and lots of comments on the album covers. Some people liked it, some people didn't, but I really love that album cover. I love that title, Stranger in Us All. It's just really enigmatic, right?
Yeah.
And it reminds me, maybe there's a show in this as well too. I've been thinking of doing a History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff on this. I don't think I have yet, but have you ever noticed the whole the style of naming albums and songs where you use a lot of really boring words? And the biggest one for that is Meatloaf, right? with the 2 out of 3 ain't bad, and the you took the words right out of
Yeah,
my mouth.
long, really
Yeah,
long. So I would do
long
anything for
titles.
love, but I won't do that.
Yeah, yeah, long titles, but all the words are boring. There's no flashy words in the title, right?
Yeah,
And for some reason, I think Cheap Trick does that. And then I've noticed that massive pop stars, like your Madonnas and your NSYNCs and all those big, massive pop stars, they name their tours that way. That there are names of tours that are 3 or 4 awkward, boring words all put together, like oops, I did it again,
yeah,
basically is
yeah,
that same
yeah,
kind of thing, right? And
yeah.
I know Cheap Trick has a bunch of these, but it's funny. There are certain bands that really like that idea. Yeah, just the long strings of boring words. And Stranger in Us All is a little bit like that. Stranger's a half flashy word,
Yeah.
but In Us All are just really boring words. You think of that Anthrax title that I can never remember the name of. We have come for you all, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, it's awkward. And it's
Yeah,
awkward to remember the order that the words are in.
yeah.
I get mixed up with Deep Purple. Is it who I always say? Is it who do they think they are, or who do we
Oh
think
yeah,
we
right.
are?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, and
obviously.
that's got an exclamation mark on the end too.
Oh yeah, that's
No
another.
question mark,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
or ellipses or
Yeah, yeah,
brackets
yeah,
or
yeah. Well, I'm
that
doing the
makes.
Genesis panel books right now, right? I just turned in the second one, so there's going to be 2 of those. But their last album, right? The album talk about messy endings. Wow,
Yeah.
and N one, and it doesn't
Oh,
even
it's
have
calling
Phil
all
on it, right?
stations. Dot dot dot. Right?
No, it's
No.
it's dot 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 calling all stations dot dot
Oh,
dot
then it repeats.
four
Yeah, yeah,
times,
that's right.
4 times. Like literally on the cover, it
Yeah,
has that four times, right?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah. It's oh my god, yeah. And then that gets and I grouse about it in the book because there's also and then there were 3,
Yeah,
which is dot dot dot. I believe it. Yeah, it's dot dot dot, and then there were 3, and I think it's dot 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 on the other side too. And it's all lowercase, right?
yeah.
And then of course that's screwed up because as soon as you put it on the spine, it's going to be uppercase and
Well,
yeah,
it want with the first letter in a sentence, it wants to be capitalized when you're
yeah,
typing it out.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
if you're going to use an ellipses like that, you should go and then there were 3 period or nothing at the end, but you shouldn't have another ellipses at the end of that, right?
yeah. It just begs for confusion. It
Yeah,
just begs for it to be written wrong, not how the artist intended. It's like use actual words
yeah,
and early on in your career, and David Coverdale's bad one for this. Decide how you want to use and.
yeah,
Do you
yeah,
want to use an ampersand? Do you want to use A and D, or do you want to use A and
yeah,
apostrophe because he's done them all?
yeah, yeah.
What is it about these Deep Purple guys? And that's another thing. Richie
Oh,
Blackmore's Rainbow first album. Well, David Coverdale Snakebite, if you want to call that the first Whitesnake album. I'm just looking. I've got the 8-track version of that. It lists the artist as David Coverdale, so it's really confusing.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, there's just a lot of that. It's funny you talk about the debut, like in the chapter. It's a really in-depth, obviously, chapter on the debut album. You mentioned the album cover. I didn't realize that was supposed to be a guitar.
oh yeah,
Just now, like just reading it, I'm like, it's like the Boston thing.
yeah, yeah.
I knew that, yeah, there was another one too. Oh yeah, the ELO. I didn't realize that was supposed to be was like a Wurlitzer jukebox or something, like the
Right.
ELO
Yeah,
logo. And
yeah,
it's like, so then I had to, and you've got, like my books, you've got nice black and white photos, and it's like, oh yeah, that is a guitar.
yeah.
Um,
And we've got a color section. I think they did a nice
yeah,
job
color
with the color
section in the
section
middle.
this
Yeah,
time. Yeah,
that's
eight
that's a
eight
good.
pages of that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this the cool. I like the Japanese singles trying to figure out what song it is. Um,
right.
but yeah, so I went and listened to the debut, and as I'm listening to it, it occurred to me I couldn't tell you the last time I listened to this because a lot of the songs on here is like I don't know how this goes. I do
Yeah,
not know how I mean, because everybody thinks Man on the Silver Mountain. Maybe they think 16th Century Greensleeves, but that's about all that immediately comes to mind. So then you start listening to it and you go, have I even listened to this album before? I must have, but
yeah,
I never realized it's a weird album. Like it's a really weird album. And talk about not knowing what you want to do. Here's Richie announcing this new band to the world, and he puts this album out that's like this weird melange of. I mean, yeah, it's got elements of Stormbringer. It's got elements of Elf. It doesn't have anything that you would really associate with what you think that Dio era of Rainbow is, except for the two songs that it's best known for.
Yeah.
And the really weird thing is, I've never understood this. Like, you know, you and I have talked. There's a book that I'm working on. Particular artist is fixated on this one particular song, and it's not a cover, but it's a song of theirs. There's three different versions of it, and it's just not a very good song. So I don't understand the fascination with bad songs. Black Sheep of the Family, the
I hope it's
Quatermass,
not. I hope it's not Fred Bear.
whole.
I hope it's not Fred Bear you're talking about.
No, 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 no.
Yeah.
But it's like, what is the fascination with this Black Sheep of the Family?
Yeah.
It's a completely average song at
Yeah.
best,
Yeah.
but yet that was the impetus for, that was the itch that Richie just couldn't help but scratch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, the panelists in the first chapter, I'm not in that one, bring up a really good point. What if they'd have gotten Dio after Gillan left instead of Coverdale and Hughes?
Yeah.
Would we have Rising and Long Live Rock and Roll with the Deep Purple name on them
Yeah.
instead of Rainbow? It's a weird what if.
So funny you bring that up because every once in a while I have to check myself and go, that's right, Ronnie was never in Deep Purple. You almost expect it after
The
a while.
worlds have, yeah, like when he the
Yeah.
closest is when he's on that when they redid the orchestra thing.
Oh yeah,
He's
yeah.
on a couple of tracks, right?
He's
But
on
yeah,
Butterfly Ball with
yeah,
Roger. Yeah.
yeah, he's been in
Yeah.
their orbit for years, but he's never actually been.
Yeah.
It's like was, you know, Glenn Hughes. He almost, the fact that he was in Black Sabbath almost seems like a a Mandela effect. Is like, did that really happen?
Yeah.
Glenn Hughes wasn't in Black Sabbath. I mean, he knew them, but
Yeah.
no, he was. It's just not. It's weird, but yeah, Dio, if anybody you'd think would have been in Deep Purple, it makes you wonder why he wasn't the obvious choice. Richie would have known him. I don't know. It's. I'm sure Coverdale and Hughes are glad because that was the launch pad for both of their careers. But yeah, it's really interesting to think about. You had this, the singer that could not, with a voice that could not be ignored.
Yeah.
There he is. I'm sure it wouldn't. Elf. It's not like Elf were selling. It's not like he would have taken a lot of convincing to join Deep Purple, whom he already probably was a fan of. It's
Yeah.
weird.
Well, that's a job for AI as it gets better and better and better. Like someone will maybe one day create 3 or 4 Deep Purple albums from
With
74 through 77 with Ronnie on them, right? Ronnie lyrics and John Lord keyboards and Ian Pace drums and the right
yeah,
production, Martin Birch, all that stuff, whole new songs, whole new sets of lyrics. I've noticed that there hasn't really been a lot of great, I keep looking for cool new AI classic rock things on YouTube, and people aren't really doing a lot of it. It's funny. It's not moving as fast as I thought it would. You look stuff up, and it's hard to find things that aren't 4 months old, 7 months old, 9 months old, or things that are really knocking your socks off that are brand new.
maybe there just aren't enough people, in our age group that are playing around with it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
if it's all like relatively younger people playing around with it, they're not gonna. It's never going to occur to them. I wonder what Deep Purple would sound like with Dio on vocals. That's not going to enter their.
yeah,
They could do it. It just wouldn't occur to them.
yeah.
One
It's
thing that I
interesting. A buddy, I did a long kind of review. There's a guy, I can't remember his name, and I think is he in Ireland or England somewhere? Forgive me, but I think he's actually posted these songs on YouTube now, but I couldn't find them. He said I could share them, but what he went and did was he's also a full-on musician himself, and he's a prof, and he completely wrote some perfect Thin Lizzy songs, and
okay.
and then put AI fill on top. And he might have done, I think the rest of it might be full band and there's no AI to it, but he's got Phil singing them and they sound amazing. Like they're
Yeah.
so good. They're like perfect Thin Lizzy songs. So there's hybrid things you can do with this as well. But
Well, then there's that band Strutter 78 that
mhm.
does that. No, not Strutter 78. Sorry. What are they called? Classic 78.
Okay. Yeah.
And they did at least 2 albums, but their first album was like, what if Kiss put out an album after Love Gun instead of the solo album? So
Yeah.
here it is. It's a 10
Yeah.
song album. There's 4 Paul songs, there's 4 Gene songs, there's an Ace and a Peter. They're new songs.
Yeah.
and they sound I mean, you listen to them with a really critical ear, you go, well, it doesn't really sound like, but the idea is there.
Yeah.
And with AI, you could tweak that a little bit more and get more of those mannerisms in there.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary, but at the same time, it's kind of neat. It's like, you know, it just, we've talked, when I talked to you about Van Halen at 50, it's like, I just want to hear more, not less.
Yeah.
And, with the parts of songs, you could do an awful lot. You could do a lot of damage too. There's some,
Yeah.
obviously there's a downside to it, but,
But there's things I was just kind of imagining the other day. I don't know why this popped into my head, but I just saw Deep Purple live and I thought, wouldn't there be a cool AI version of Deep Purple absolutely perfectly live? The mix exactly like they do it with Simon McBride, and they're doing Tarot Woman or something, right?
or for that matter, Burn.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I remember even asking Ian about that once. Why would I do those songs? It's like, stop doing Hush, guys. I'd never want to hear Hush ever again, right?
Yeah.
Stop it, right? But yeah, I mean, Burn, of course, but yeah, Tarot Woman or something crazy like that, right? I would love and
The
see it.
fans would
So
go
why couldn't
crazy.
you see it even like on AI? Like, go look up the YouTube video of Deep Purple live in Toronto from August 25th playing Tarot Woman, right?
Yeah. Yeah, same ambiance of the crowd and stuff. Yeah, I
Yeah,
saw you saw Deep Purple, and yes, that's very cool.
yeah,
Um, so the other thing about Deep Purple, the even messier thing, is that the whole Ronnie Romero thing, which you
yeah,
guys briefly mentioned, but you don't go into a lot of detail. And I remember it's funny that the live album they did has been repackaged several times. I happened to see it at Sunrise, and I was like, oh, why not? Well, first of all, over half of the set's Deep Purple. So right away, you're like, why did they call this? You know, why is this under the Rainbow name? And Ronnie Romero's a great singer, but it's like he needed a little bit more time to, I don't know, have a vocal coach telling him where to put the emphasis on some of the words and
yeah,
and like the mixed, the broken
yeah.
English and stuff like that. But that was a totally messy thing because I think Joe Lynn Turner, according to him, he was all but ready to step back in and do a Rainbow tour, but it didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy too. Yeah, yeah. This is the band with the messiest end of all of them, right? With when you bring that into it as well, right? And then don't we get Black Sheep in the Family again with Ronnie at some point? Or I thought
Um,
they redid something. They had to redo something. I don't know why redo
it
things.
might have been just a digital only thing. It's not on the live album, but like the live album has got like I said, it's got more Deep Purple than Rainbow, like by about I don't know
Mm.
9 songs to 7 or something like that.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
it's really and it's a dare I say it's a sloppy sounding live album.
yeah.
Ronnie's probably the MVP of it, but everybody else, Blackmore included, it's like, man, did you how much did you rehearse? It doesn't sound like you. It sounds like this is a rehearsal, and it's like the first or second one.
Yeah, yeah.
Weird, really weird. But there's no studio album to talk about, so it's a moot point. But
Yeah.
you know, but with this, yeah, it is kind of surprising how substantial a book this is. But I think it's because it's not like you had a band that did 7 albums and they all sound relatively the same. After a while, you're going to run out of things to talk about. But because they're all so different, even within themselves, like if you the 3DO albums, that's 3 different lineups. And Rising, they're all kind of their own thing. That
Yeah.
first album's that weird hybrid. Rising is generally, considered to be the classic. It's all heavy. There's no ballads. Long Live Rock and Roll is somewhere in between. You've got Down to Earth all by itself. You're right. It is like their rock and hard place. But even the 3 Joel and Turner albums are all very different to each other.
Mhm.
Difficult to Cure is like the beta test version of
Yeah,
Straight Between the Eyes.
exactly.
Straight
Yeah.
Between the Eyes is my personal favorite. I think that's where they get the sound that Richie wanted, the radio sound, but still with the harder rocking stuff. And then Bennett of Shape is just this really nice, smooth kind of textured hard rock. So
Mhm.
there's a lot to talk about in this. So if people are
Yeah.
thinking that's such a small catalog, how do you get so many, almost 300 page, yeah, 308 pages? Well, pick up the book and find out. There's a lot to take in for a relatively small catalog.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah.
So yeah, Run of the Wolf, Rainbow on Record, another panel book from Martin Popoff, martinpopoff.com, so you can get this and all of Martin's books. Please order directly from Martin instead of anywhere else. You will get a personalized message. I really liked mine. Now you got two books connected to the Wizard of Oz. I thought that was pretty funny. I said, well, now I got to do a Toto book to make it the hat trick. All three of them.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I know you've always got things in the hopper. What is happening? What are your latest? What's just out? And is there anything you can tell us that you're working on?
Well, speaking of these album by album books, the big hardcover full color throughout with some celebrity album by album books that started this whole process years ago through Voyager Press. We just updated the Iron Maiden one with the Senjutsu chapter, and right around the corner, I've got coming out a full Judas Priest one. So that's going to be full color throughout hardcover. So we're back to doing those ones. And like I say, I've got the two Genesis ones that I've done with Weimer. They're gonna be the same look, same cover design as this rainbow one. And of course, so far we've done with them The Cure, Thin Lizzy, Robert Plant, and Blue Oyster Cult. So we've got, since we started this process, we've got 4 others. So we've got 5. This one's not at my site yet, but I physically have them. I've been shipping them out for about a week now. So yeah, you could Facebook me or email me at martinp@inforamp.net. Or go to my website and my email address is there. Or click on any of those other ones because it's all the same price as all those other ones, and just email me and tell me that it's for the rainbow or whatever. But yeah, sign them, ship them out, PayPal buttons, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, very easy, very painless. And you've also got History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff, your weekly podcast. You've got Kicked in the Teeth with John Gaffney for AC/DC. Yep. And regularly appearing on Sea of Tranquility with Pete. I'm always interested to see what you guys are going to come up with next. And what am I missing? Contrarians, of course, the Contrarians. And basically whatever's going on with Martin for books and whatever else, go to martinpopoff.com. Yeah, follow him on Facebook. And if you're a Deep Purple Rainbow fan, this is an excellent addition to your collection. It'll make you revisit this catalog. So, Mark, thanks for coming on and chatting about the book, and thanks for including me in the book. It's always a pleasure. And I guess that's about it. Did I miss anything?
No, that's cool. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching this edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Go listen to some Rainbow.